Hey, my name's Sesay. Want to create a lighting recipe guide? And have you asked yourself the question, should I use a light meter? And when I do, should I use it dome up or dome down? Well, in this video, we're going to answer all those questions and more. So this video assumes that you understand the relationship between shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. So a light meter allows you to enter two values on the exposure triangle, and it will give you the third. But only more advanced meters will have ISO priority. Basic meters require that your ISO remains fixed. In this video, I also use a mix of both flash and constant lights. So to make everyone happy that says you don't need to use a light meter, for the next setup, I'm not going to use a light meter. I'm only going to use my eyes and my nice ultra-wide display and capture one. So I did what we all do at times to set up this lighting setup. Shoot, adjust, shoot, adjust, shoot, adjust, and shoot, adjust. And I must say the results you get on screen are great. And you have the eyedropper and detailed histograms in Capture One, which are a huge help. But now I'm going to create a lighting diagram so I don't forget all the hard work that I spent putting into this lighting setup that uses both constant lights and strobes. So what I do is use an app called Notability. I photograph the set on my iPad and then draw in the distances of each light, the height of each light, and what each light metered at. In some cases, I even measure how the light is falling off on the subject and show the light reading at 2 points. Then I'll create a lighting diagram. So when I set this up, I didn't use a measuring tape or a light meter. But now, when I get it all set up again, I can get it dialed in just that much quicker. If I have an assistant, I can give them this diagram and photos and let them dial it in for me. Have you ever seen shoots with multiple celebrities, but they were not all photographed at once? A solid lighting diagram and a meter is key because sometimes you will actually have to travel with the set as well. Many professional photographers will even do lighting tests in their studio and then replicate the lighting at a location more convenient for the subject. And let's say on this shot, in which I'm using both strobes and constant lights, I want to dial the lights down to shoot at f1.7 on one of my favorite Fuji lenses. The strobes are easy to dial down in tenths of a stop, but when it comes to the constant lights, I can meter them to make sure they dial down exactly to the same ratio as the strobes without having to go back to shooting and guess mode. And when you are using this many lights, TTL isn't an easier option. It's great when you have flat light coming from behind your camera, but this shot uses 6 lights. When shooting, we have 4 things to help us meter light. Our eyes are the most important when evaluating a scene, and they get significantly better with time, or significantly worse. A monitor is great, and when calibrated and used properly with the help of a histogram, it's perfect. Next is your camera, which uses a reflected light or light coming from the subject to give you an exposure. With a scene like this, there are many things that will fool your camera's meter and TTL, like the big constant lights as props in the background. Then we have our light meter, which allows us to create lighting recipes and really evaluates the set and helps us understand what the light is doing and the way it's falling on our subjects. And one of the best things you can do to increase the confidence of the person in front of your lens is to show them the first picture you take and have the lighting be perfect. And when you're shooting celebrities or simply anyone hiring you to take their picture, they aren't there to be a test model. Test light on your friends and assistants, create lighting recipes, and then give your clients beautiful images, not test shoots. So now let's answer an age-old question, dome up or dome down? And where should I place and point my meter if I'm doing a portrait? Let's start by looking at our model's face and then the direction of the light hitting it. A face is 3-dimensional, so you need to meter 3-dimensionally. A fail-safe way to meter is place the meter parallel to the surface you are metering with the dome down. So when I meter our model's forehead, I get the exposure on their forehead properly exposed. But when I meter the model's eye socket, I get a different exposure. And when I meter the bridge of the model's nose, I get her nose properly exposed, which is similar to the forehead because they are at a similar angle. Metering with the dome down, you are able to factor in the dimensionality of someone's face to maintain proper exposure on all parts of the face you want lit. So if I meter the top of the forehead versus the eye socket versus the bridge of the nose, you see I get different or similar readings based on the angle of the light and the angle of the object relative to the camera. But in most traditional portrait setups, you will find yourself metering the bright and shadow side of a model's face to see the difference a fill light makes, or the difference between your model and the light falling on the background. So now I have three options. Change the angle of the model's face. This gives us a quick fix and could be your only option if someone is in direct sunlight overhead. But now, what if we want our model looking at the camera? In this case, we need to change the angle of the light. Here I have the same light, but at an angle more on axis with the camera. When I meter, you can see both the light on the forehead and the eye sockets don't differ as much. If you're shooting beauty, it's a great way to dial in the direction of your key light. And your third option is to add a fill light or reflector to bring the light back into your model's eyes. So I'll first meter the light hitting the model's forehead, then I'll meter the fill light. I've added a purple gel to my fill light for effect. I dialed it in about a half stop difference, but then I'll turn both of them on and meter again to see how the combination of both lights has changed my overall exposure. So when we added the fill light, we just created a lighting recipe. So when metering the dome out, it takes in light from all angles and gives you an overall general meter reading. Metering with the dome out is designed for measuring three-dimensional objects that mimic the shape of a dome with the light coming in from all angles. When metering dome down, it's specifically designed to only measure light coming in from one angle. Oftentimes you'll find cinematographers putting their hand above the meter when it's dome out to replicate this. Outside on an overcast day, you'll see little difference with dome in or dome out. But metering very directional sunlight, you'll see a huge difference depending on the angle of the meter. When I'm metering a particular subject, I often use dome down. When I'm metering an entire scene, I'm often using dome up. For example, the video that I'm shooting today, I'll start with just the modeling lights on, but then it's hard to see my lighting setup or even myself. So I'll aim lights into the ceiling and make sure that the light that is usually hitting my model is about a stop or two stops over the light that I'm considering the quote room lighting or available light. For this, I'll just walk around with the dome out to understand the overall contrast of the scene to make adjustments if needed. So this enables me to keep a ratio between my modeling lights and the room lights so that you can see the results of the lights I'm using on our model while also being able to have an idea of what gear I'm using. If the entire video looked like this, you probably wouldn't watch it. Video lights let you dial them in using a scale of 1 to 100, but that's not easily translated into f-stops. Using a meter, I can hold the measuring button down while adjusting the lights to see when it's reduced by 1 stop. This is key if you're using a mixed bag of video lights and want to reduce each one by exactly 1 f-stop. If you own an L308X, you're going to want to get a flat diffuser, which is like the equivalent of using dome down. The dome slides to the side and you simply snap it on. And when you're not using it, it sits to the right of the dome. Everything I do in this video can be done using just the L308X and flat diffuser. The L478 gives you more modes, touchscreen functionality, and the ability to get a version with a PocketWizard, Elinchrom, or Photics radio transmitter built in. And you can get an optional 5-degree spot meter attachment for it. The L858D gives you the ability to remotely fire and control the power of Godox, Broncolor, Elinchrom, and Photics, all with a removable radio module. And it has a built-in 1-degree spot meter while also being 3 stops more sensitive, measuring incident light than other meters. One thing a lot of photographers or cinematographers pride themselves on these days is that they don't need a light meter. Well, guess what? You don't need to use a light meter all the time. But if you want to level up your lighting, learn how to use a handheld meter. Or if you want to be a better photo assistant and be able to pre-light, then it will definitely come in handy. And many photographers don't use them anymore, only shoot tethered, and usually have years of built-up lighting recipes in their head and feel as though they don't need one anymore. I'm constantly learning light, evaluating new lights, and in this video we only discussed the basics. I didn't get into measuring a combination of ambient and fill flash percentages to get a balanced look in the sun. I didn't discuss metering flash duration to make sure that you get sharp images with fast motion. I didn't talk about using a meter to make sure your green screen is as even as possible for more accurate keys, or your white background is as even as possible when you're doing that next e-commerce shoot. I didn't even get to talk about the zone system and evaluating a scene with a spot meter and how changing your ISO can change the effective stops above middle gray. I just touched the surface. When you're learning lighting, you can take the red or blue pill, because at the end of the day, there's levels to this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to see content just like this on Adorama TV. And if you want me to do a deep dive going behind the scenes on how to build a set like this, here I use 6 lights, but I'll challenge myself a bit more, using anywhere between 10 and 20 lights. Put in the comments below. Light it up, Ab. I'll give you a behind the scenes of the grip I use, how I run power, and my thought process into building a set in order to get more depth into your images. Again, as you know, there's levels to this.